December 31st, 2024, last day of the year. Happy New Year's to everyone, and especially you, GP. We're missing Nick. He's a little under the weather, and that's been going around. So hopefully he'll be on the mend soon. Here come the tweets. New Year's Eve podcast with G Piza. We miss you, Jeff DI. Let's talk about a leg down. That might trigger some people. Tesla, Nvidia, and Bitcoin. How about that? You like
Sure.
those? I like those. There we go. Hey, GP.
Going on?
Can you hear me?
What's that?
GP? Oh, yeah. For what some reason, my volume was all the way down. Hi, GP.
Hello.
What's happening? Looks like just a remarkable market here to watch.
It's been kind of useless.
Yeah, these are the days that I don't miss sitting in front of my computer waiting to do something.
I'm just tweeting,
You're just tweeting,
tweeting.
tweeting, twatting.
Hold on.
You're all good. It's just us. And it's lunch brunch, um, Bloody Mary time for me.
Yeah, I gotta make a appetizer for New Year's Eve tonight, so it should be fun.
We got Monkey Banana Genius out here gloating on his fantasy football championship.
Yeah, he did.
That's half of my replies today.
I fantasy's always. I was going for a back-to-back in my other league, and the week that I played, my team obviously shit the bed. And if I had played this week, I would have won the championship. It's just fantasy is always like that. So um, I was looking for a back-to-backer like the Kansas City Chiefs, but didn't work.
Yeah, I finished second, third, and fifth, respectively, in my three leagues.
Pretty
So
good.
not where you want to be, but two out of the three I had chances, right? So that's the best you can ask for. But hey, I was talking with our good buddy Nasty Nate, and I think he's joined me, and we're going to see some down camp. He kind of thinks we got an ABC down happening here, and it's hard for me to disagree. You're probably going to disagree, but there's your ABC. How much further does it go? It's kind of stopped on the 50 day yesterday with a little bounce, but we're drawing down further right now. And if I remove that line from the weekly, we're sitting right on, was that the nine? Yeah, we're sitting right on the nine for the most part. What do you think, GP? You think it'll hold here?
I I think
Nothing's going to surprise you at this point.
we've been sideways since July. So like just by sideways I mean we hit 503, 504 in the queues on July 11th or whatever it was, or July 1st, whatever.
Yeah.
And we're sitting at 513. So all the hoopla, all the other stuff, we've been pretty much sideways for 6 months now. We thought elections would release us. Elections did not release us. Um,
Well, I mean, let's elections did give us 10% up.
but it's up 2% in 6 months, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying we did go up after the election for several weeks.
but
And
there's no sustainability, right? There's no
yeah,
upside movement, and I'm looking at the 10 years going opposite of whatever the Fed is doing. It's like literally become the contrarian trade, and um, dollar continues to be strong. VIX pops 75% for no reason. Um, it's interesting to see a lot of this stuff. I can say I think pretty confidently that it hasn't been, maybe there's tax law selling, but it hasn't been anything but flow. And you can literally see the flow come in and the market respond. And it's a light volume trading time. Flow kind of dominates more so. We've been talking this for a couple of years. This market is no longer and has no longer been driven by organic buying, so to speak. It's flow driven. It has been flow driven, and it will continue to be flow driven. I'm looking at Bitcoin and the MicroStrategy coin divergence the last 2 days,
mm,
right? Bitcoin is up 2 grand today, and both coin and MicroStrategy are down. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just been faded consistently. It's kind of holding that 253 area, which is the IPO quarterly close from 2021. Um, it's just not going anywhere for the most part, right? You can argue downtrend, uptrend, ABC correction, but if you're stepping back and looking at it, we haven't really. Yes, there's been individual names that have done really well, but overall markets have not really budged since July.
yeah,
And that to me is a market waiting for better direction. The and it the chart essentially represents the waffling from the Fed continuously. Like their September message versus their October message versus their December message. It is constant waffle. People are, and so I was talking to a friend who works in the hedge fund industry this weekend, and it's to me, it's like a stalemate across the board, right? Like housing is not going to budge. They keep pumping up the 30-year based on the Fed cutting. So it makes no sense to me, right? They're essentially anticipating that the Fed is wrong and they're going to take the contrarian trade. If the Fed is not wrong, that will trade will unwind and whatever. But you have a housing market that's pretty much stuck, right? Their prices haven't gone anywhere, and people are just, they're like, ah, fuck it, I don't really care anymore, right? So um, I'll just wait till things get better. I think the deal market is also getting very shallow because you have a monetary regime that is essentially undecided at this point. Because if you talk to the Fed this month versus next month versus prior month, it is a inconsistent theme, and the market's kind of representing the inconsistencies. Um, I honestly, my contrarian trade is that volatility will hit the lowest it's ever hit next year. It's the same kind of contrarian trade that everyone thought would happen in 2017, the first year that Trump was elected. Um, Volatility hit sub 9 in his first year, right? And in a market that was extremely volatile going into that 2016 election. You remember that? Like we were down like thousands of points knowing that Trump was going to win and completely reverse and stuff like that. And we ended up hitting some of the lowest volatility historically the first year. So I'm expecting kind of the similar views here that it's it's once you realize his own volatility, and so the later part of his cycle, when he's no longer being, he can run for president, especially the second term, the volatility will increase. But first, it will decrease. That's my thought process here. Um, but I honestly don't have a read on short-term markets here, right? You can argue that it's an ABC correction. It hasn't made a new low yet. There's not
Right.
a ton of volume, and the biggest volume was actually the day it bottomed, right? Like in the Qs and the SPY, all that other stuff. So like we haven't even broken that low. If we break that low, all those buyers then become sellers, and then volume will probably increase because they'll be getting stopped out left and right, right? So um, I see the ABC correction, I understand it, but as of now, when we've had these bottoms, if you look at like the September timeframe or the probably the April timeframe is the better one. If
Which
you
one?
April for the Qs,
Well,
right? We had that bottom, and then we spent. Do you see it? April
Yep.
19th, right? Or so. Yeah.
Right in the crosshairs.
Right. Not the go to the daily. I think the daily represents more of this kind of scenario here. Like you have this pretty decent bottom, tried to bounce around the 50, rejected 3 straight days. We're looking at 4 straight days here. Market's not closed yet, so maybe we reverse it here, but it's kind of the similar pattern here, and we're just sideways, just waiting for stuff to unfold for 2025. I always like to use this day to find what's relatively strong to finish out the year. Uh, the one that sits on the two that kind of sitting on my list is Celsius.
Celsius Holdings.
Yeah. And Reddit. I don't know. I don't have a great read, so when it's like this, you just kind of step back and wait for it.
Wow, Celsius really been slammed in 2024.
Oh, absolutely destroyed.
And Reddit, yeah, I like Reddit too. I liked Reddit back in the summer when we were first talking about it, and just never pulled the trigger. So it's been on my watch for a minute.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know me and my doodles, right? Like that looks a little concerning to me on the Reddit chart. But we'll see.
Yeah.
It's bouncing from the 20 today. So we'll see. But I never like seeing anything that reminds me of Batman. It just doesn't give me confidence. And I've been wrong.
Oh.
Batman's not 100% pattern, of course.
No, but this market in general doesn't give a lot of confidence, right? Because you can literally have these moves that it's not like if you've been watching, I don't know, pretty much all of this year, you have this opening bid that gets bought up for whatever reason on so many stocks. You'll get 2, 3% to start the first 15 minutes, and they will spend the next 6 hours and 15 minutes just wrecking it on low volume. And um, there's, yeah, I don't have a great read short term, to be honest.
So if anyone's watched us for any amount of time, one of my, I guess, warning flags is if you're just treading water, right? I feel like if you're not able to move, and we can pull up the cues here. Yeah, we had this volatility change, but I mean, basically, we're still December's pretty much been flat, right?
It's red,
Um,
no?
what's that?
It's red for the month
It's
pretty
up
badly.
0.7% for the month. The cues are.
Yes, yes. You can argue that it's a shooting star, right?
Yep,
On
but
heavier volume,
what I
which you wouldn't have expected for December when it's a light month. So probably stuff to pay attention to.
yeah, I feel like if you're not able to keep moving higher and you're not in a period of consolidation that looks more like this, right? Or more like this, or more like this. That's a lot more volatility than you see in these other consolidations period just over the past few months. It really feels like to me that the market wants to go lower. And I'm not saying it comes down to this trend line around 490 something. But you guys have known my MO for the last 6 weeks, right? I've been an unabashed seller on almost every opportunity I've had. So, um, do I think that'll be the end of the selling? I don't know. But when we're not moving up and we have this kind of volatility, it makes me believe that we still got another leg or two down. Maybe I'm wrong. Um, Alex wants to know about bonds. No, I'm not unsure about bonds. I mean, I look at the I've said this for weeks now. I look at the US 10 year and the 2 year. That's the wrong chart. So yeah, I mean, it's been on a march this month, right? And if I look at the 2 year, the yields 4.5% on the 10 year, and we're starting to see some diversion now on the 2 year falling down. Um, if we keep this 10 year moving up at the pace it's moving, I really am more in the camp of we're going to have a 2025 recession. And I hate saying that. I hate making a call like that. But when bonds break the inversion, the yield curve inversion that we were in, we actually came back and ticked it again. What was that in September or October? Might have been August. So we actually dipped back into it again to re-invert it, but now we're uninverted. Um, I I I worry that that's going to continue, and um, we'll see what the Fed does over the next several sessions. I hope you're right, GP. I kind of hope that there's less volatility, but I'm still in the camp that there's going to be some pain in 2025. And I don't want to be the negative Nelly and say this is a 2022 redo all over again. I don't think that's the case at all. But uh, I'm being prepared by selling. Yeah, I think the tens will probably break five. I think you're probably right. Where did it go?
It hasn't even made a new high.
Not yet.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, if you were
even
if you were looking at this chart and it wasn't the 10 year, would you buy this chart?
I wouldn't.
Please tell me more.
Okay, so uh, I'm looking at the 10-year on the weekly. You have fading momentum, so to speak. First of all, you have lower highs, right? You peaked in October of 2023 at 5.01 or whatever it was. You came back and tagged that 377 level, came back to coming up. You came back and broke that level, and now you're trying to come back up here. We haven't made a new high, even though it's been so strong. The volume is decreasing on the move up, on each one of these moves up. So it's losing momentum. You can see it on the RSI. You can see it on the weekly MACD. So to me, as of now, the 10-year is actually a red week, right? Even though it's up today, it's a red
Yep.
week.
Yep.
Uh,
So far.
so like you had a crap ton of volume on the 10-year. I'm looking at my charts. I'm not sure in April, right? And then you had less crap ton of volume on 8.5, essentially the bottoms, right? In the markets. And this time was even less than that. So the buying momentum is slowing down as we're making a lower high. And so to me, that until it does, even if it makes a new high, but it's on lower volume and it's an incremental high, I'd be concerned because the momentum is slowing down. And this is not something I trade, it's just something I watch, right? So um, that's what I'm looking at. You could potentially argue that it's a complex head and shoulders. Um, yeah, like it's just not something I would buy.
I see it as a breakout. I drew that trend line for you right
Yeah.
there. I view it as a breakout, and breakouts don't. Not every breakout goes parabolic, but I would expect it to be close to five. It can still be a lower high and go up to 4.9, right? If
Hmm.
we're talking about this higher high over here, and this is a lower high, obviously. Right now, we're a third lower high if it were to stop today, but we don't know if that's going to happen. If I were playing this as a stock, I would set my stop below 4.3 and play it to 4.9, right? You risk three to win five, or
Yeah.
risk two to win five.
Yeah, yeah, I get that.
I haven't looked at the TLT, but Alex asked about the TLT too. It looks like a dumpster fire.
It is telling you what we talked about earlier, which is the lack of monetary policy has pretty much left it what sideways since 2022,
Yep.
um, and pretty much sideways since '03. Right? We're at the same levels that we were in '03. They could further break down. The bond market is telling you that it is breaking the month lower so far. It will be on lower volume here, even, and that was after the hammer. So it could be one of those trend reversal moves if you're looking at the TLT. Um, there's just no direction. So bonds have no direction. That's my opinion. And you can argue that it's downtrending, and I
Yep.
would make the argument that I made in 2022. It's fucking sideways. All this volume, all this stuff, and we're literally just going sideways. If you had bought in, when was it? September of 2023 at $88, you are now down $1, right? So
Right.
yeah, right. So
Congratulations, you lost less.
yes. And if you had bought the lows, you are up $5. And to me, that's trendless. And you can argue downtrend, whatever. To me, that's trendless. If something is going sideways and it has not moved from a year ago, year plus, and you can argue that it's a back test. If you're looking at the weekly volume, and if you're on the weekly here, there's a lot of accumulation here.
Yeah.
There's a ton of accumulation. Yes, there's a ton of selling, but none of the selling has matched the peak from 2023 bottom, right?
Yeah, I can agree with your we haven't gone anywhere.
It's doing nothing, right? And that's kind of like data dependent, so to speak, right? And then you can argue along across the board on how many things have done nothing for so long, right? Tesla is sideways since 2021, right? Meta has been essentially sideways for the better part of 2024. Right? We're kind of sitting just slightly above where we peaked in January of 2024 for Meta, I believe.
Every chart that I'm pulling up, I'm looking at RSIs. Even in names where you've lost some of the moving averages, all the RSIs are showing weakness. It doesn't matter what chart I'm pulling up, really. There's Tesla. See, it's starting to come back to reality. We were
Is
looking
that
at,
weekly? Take a
yeah,
take a
yeah,
look. Do you have the 50 and 200 day?
yep. 50 is the orange line, and the 200 is now on screen with the red. You want on the daily,
No, the weekly.
weekly?
I
There you go.
I have it setting up as a golden cross, right?
Setting up
So
there, yep.
yeah, so to me, this is whatever, right? Deliveries, it may gap down, whatever. There's a lot of flow suggesting it may go down, but to me, weakness into these weekly golden crosses are usually pretty solid buying opportunities, right? So, um, looks like they're gonna fail it on the monthly breakout because it's gonna close below 41450, which Tesla is notorious for doing these things. But when you have the 50, the 200 kind of flat, it's kind of sloping higher, and you have the 50 curling pretty hard here. Weakness into the curl to allow the cross to happen um, has been a pretty solid point to buy. Like I said, it's delivery numbers and there's a lot of options flow and stuff like that. So you can go back and retest levels, but um, yeah, I like the setup here going into you have the monthly MACD cross, you have the quarterly MACD cross, you have the weekly golden cross setting up here. There's a lot of stuff to like, but it is Tesla. Everyone is expecting Tesla to break out in 2025. So my prediction is I think it does too, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla doesn't do any of that stuff because literally everyone's waiting for it.
We got several folks asking about coin. Um, Here's the coin chart. I'm still in shares around $55 in coin. So I'm not looking to add to my exposure in coin. If I want more exposure, I'll just buy more crypto, which I have been doing. I haven't been buying equities, but I've been buying more crypto. Um, I mean, I think the story for Coinbase is that is the place to buy your crypto, and whether it's institutions using Coinbase or just the amount of retail users using Coinbase. I think that's the story for Coinbase. Technically, um, I mean it doesn't look great. I mean it lost the 9 weekly. It's coming into this area around 233. And you've got um the double moving averages there of the 20 and the 50 that usually serve when they're that tight together, serve as some type of support. But if it were to lose that, I would look down there at that 161 line. I don't know if that's going to happen. It's hard for me to believe that Coinbase is not going to go higher if crypto is going higher, which I still believe it's going to. Um, but GP, you were studying on the differences between Bitcoin, coin, and MicroStrategy. And I can't log on to Twitter without seeing everybody and their brother being so happy about MicroStrategy at buying levels, but I just don't see it here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're right, but I don't see the appeal. I mean, here's another chart. I mean, we can go back to Coinbase and see there's the RSI rolling over right here. MicroStrategy, there's the RSI rolling over. Um, it just doesn't look like it's at a buy spot for me. And I've never owned MicroStrategy, so I couldn't tell you the chart history or how the chart behaves. But it's not something I'm interested in.
No,
Right.
it's also a failed yearly breakout, right? So that 331 from 2000 um, should have held the 331 level, and it did not. It's on verge. It's potential spring setup. I get that's a possibility here because the volume is low. Um, it's not a great looking chart, right? And when you have that high volume bar on the daily, and then it can't find footing after that, it's probably done for a while, right? Probably needs to consolidate and stuff like that. So, I in my group, people were asking me about MicroStrategy, and I was like, you stay away from this now until it shows a footing, and it hasn't shown a footing.
Nope.
Um, and so you got to see when buyers step in. And there was a moment for a couple of months where buyers stepped in on every single moment. And now buyers are not stepping in, but sellers are stepping in. So there's a trend shift, there's a character shift, all of that stuff. Um, so yeah, MicroStrategy may do whatever it wants to do, but it's tied to Bitcoin ultimately, and it's not tied to Bitcoin ultimately either. Look, Bitcoin's up today. It's
Yep.
green, and MicroStrategy is red. Yesterday, Bitcoin was up. MicroStrategy was red, right? It's almost like MicroStrategy is leading Bitcoin in a weird way because as soon as the markets closed yesterday, Bitcoin dropped like 2.5 grand or whatever it was, and you saw MicroStrategy get really weak into the close while Bitcoin was still green and essentially, and that kind of makes sense. They're one of the largest holders of Bitcoin, right?
Yep.
Um, so yeah, and but Coinbase is the one that doesn't entirely make a lot of sense to me because they don't hold any Bitcoin. They are a transactional company, and alts are still pumping, doing whatever they're doing. Bitcoin's doing whatever, and so it's no longer trading towards Bitcoin either. The divergence is there, and on a low volume back test, it's been frustrating. It's been quite annoying, but you have to remember the low in Coinbase was 31. The
I mean,
high
the
was three.
market's turning right now as we speak on crypto. I mean, we've over the last 10 minutes, we've sort of had a flush on several on everything basically.
Yeah, even in the regular markets, right? So,
Yep.
um, end of year nonsense, a lot of low volume stuff. But the thing for me is that Coinbase went from 31 to 324. That's a 10x in 2 years. There's going to be a lot of profit taking and consolidation in this range. So the question is whether you can, if you think the crypto cycle is over, then get the hell out of Coinbase, right?
Yep. Yep.
And ultimately, Bitcoin is putting in a nasty red monthly bar. And this is and there's not a lot of volume on it, but this is with Saylor buying the shit out of Bitcoin, pumping the shit out of Bitcoin at the highs. Nowhere to be found in the 50s and 60s, but grifting as much as he can here at the $100,000 range. So, look, ultimately, there's a lot of things failing, right? Tesla just failed badly. It's now undercutting for that 414 level. And so you should be cautious ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, I posted this a couple weeks ago from on Stock Twits. I mean, you got it? you got to take out lines of resistance. And yeah, it was great to go over 100K. It was great to top out, at 108. But it's not been sustainable. And I still come back to what I was saying several weeks ago about coin and in some case MicroStrategy. It comes back to their company, right? And that's the reason why I buy the crypto as opposed to a proxy, which you could call Coinbase or MicroStrategy as a proxy. So I would rather own the asset than be tied to a company. And I'm not saying that that's been the price differences. And I can see where MicroStrategy had, you could say MicroStrategy has led Bitcoin in some ways. But I don't know if that's sustainable. We've gone through all these different cycles of who's leader, who's laggard, right? And everybody trades roles, everybody switches place. So I don't hang my hat too high on that until we see a trends in place. And if looking at this tells me anything, the trend's not in place unless all of a sudden we're going to see a huge Bitcoin dump over the next few weeks or sooner. And I mean, that could happen. The chart looks a little weak still. We're underneath all these moving averages on the daily and the weekly. We've lost the nine. RSI is still okay on the weekly, but you had this point where I would expect some more up before this fails, just based on how both the stochastic and the RSI are. But you keep seeing it all the way down. This is the daily. Snuffed out on the nine, snuffed out on the nine, broke out, failed on the 20, snuffed out on the nine, snuffed out on the nine, snuffed out on the nine. And this week or today, what does it look like? Snuffed out on the nine. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball, um, but I don't. All we can do is use what we have to make the best decisions. And JB in the chat, I think he was. Where's his question? Thanks, Jason. Thanks for stopping by. Um, Sorry, JB, I missed your question. We went too fast. Oh, well, what about the incoming administration? Does that make you more bullish on crypto? Yeah, I mean a little bit. It doesn't hurt that the incoming president's son is very involved. That doesn't hurt at all. So we'll see.
But
But
you
at the
can
same
argue
time,
that,
I'm
could you
not
argue,
I'm less concerned about with what the administration's going to do than what the price action's going to do. And I'm more technical than I am news related. But yeah, good news doesn't usually hurt.
could you argue that that's what the run was in crypto, that the
Yeah, you
upcoming
could argue that
administration,
that was what predicated the run. Yeah, you sure could.
right? We're a forward-looking market in general, so if if this was all pull forward based on the administration coming in and people seeing that the administration was going to win, then then you could argue that the move is
Buy the
for
rumor, sell the
now.
news,
Yeah,
right?
for now, the move is captured, right? And you would need something that would not be expected in the crypto world to get the next leg higher. And I think strategic reserve is not one of them because I don't honestly know how that solves our debt crisis. It
It
ties
doesn't.
it to, huh?
It doesn't.
It doesn't, and it's expected. Everyone already expects it. So if it happens, like what, like if it's expected to happen or whatever, then people are already positioning for it. But that's me in general is like, yeah, I don't necessarily see a recession coming in 2025, um, just based on anecdotal stuff, but Uh, this is a pretty terrible close to the year, and
It leads a lot to be desired
yeah,
for on everything, not just equities and stocks, but crypto as well.
yeah, and I think for me has been all year is things are getting to pivots and then getting slapped, right? Getting to pivots and getting slapped. Horizontal pivots, diagonal pivots, pivot highs, gap pivots, and like so both sides, right? Like up and down. And so in a year where the markets are up 20, 30%, you would expect more free flowing moves out of pivots up and through, and you haven't really seen that. And so that's a concern for me overall, in general. But I looked at, I think I looked at financials, right? Financials are usually the like if you guys are doing this, if you've been doing this for a long time, in secular bull markets, financials are the last sector to participate, right? It's the last sector that gets deregulated because it's the heaviest regulated. You have you have I think financials in a position where they're just starting to break out. So I don't think the markets are in for a big pull. It's going to have its corrections, 10%, whatever. Um, but right, like so XLF is pulling in for sure, and KRE has not broken out, but your KRE is working on repairing the moving averages on a weekly basis. XLF is up what, 20% since 2008
20% since '08.
or 30%?
Since '08.
Yeah, it hit 31.
'08.
No, the '08 highs.
Oh, I was gonna say that's way more than that. The
Yeah, the
'08
'08 highs was
highs.
31,
Yes,
30.98,
yes, yes,
right? And we're
yes,
sitting at 48. So we're up 17 bucks on 30. So we're up a bit more than 50%.
yeah, about 50.
And you had a consolidation for 2 years after it cleared all-time highs from 2008, and it's just starting to break out. Um, Not a great month for sure. In XLF, it's a big red month. It's on lower volume, but if you're looking at charts of Wells Fargo, um, if you're looking at charts of Wells Fargo is just starting to kind of move out of this consolidation, in my opinion. Bank of America hasn't even broken out yet.
So
Citigroup
you're
hasn't
telling me
broken
I
out.
sold my $20 Wells Fargo way too soon?
I don't know. I just, yeah, I don't have a great read on the markets ultimately. Um, Short term, I'm talking about short term. I think long term, I think we're still in a pretty good cycle. You have the most miserable stock on the planet, AMD. Um, I don't even know what to say, Bags. We are in, like, I know Intel was terrible, but goodness, like
AMD.
that you're betting on a terrible management and Intel for 25 years to turn it around. It's a heavier ask than AMD with great management is putting in a red year. You're talking about AI boom and it's putting in a red year, right? Like, um, it tells you all you need to know about AMD's trading prowess.
We especially me, I'll say I was crapping on semis. But they're kind of, yes, they didn't have the overperformance of late fall and into winter as others did, but they are legitimately sideways all year long,
Yep.
right? Like if we take right here, I mean, we're up. This is on the SMH. We're up less than 10%. I mean, you're not even beating the market at that point, right?
SMH.
Yeah.
I'm pulling it up. Hold on.
Well, if I pull up the yearly, that'll
The
be,
yearly's up more, yeah.
yeah, you're up 38%.
Yeah. But USD is the one I watch a bit more, which is having, oh no, that's the levered one. That's not the one.
I was looking there at late January as opposed to going back a little further.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, dude, we've been, like I said, we've been sideways for in the market since July, and um, you can argue all you want. We just have no trend, like direction up, down, whatever, right?
I'm gonna scroll back in the chat and let's look at some of these charts.
Sure.
FSLR was a name that I saw. That looks like not a lot of fun, to be honest with you. I
It's
mean,
up on
we're
the year.
2.6%.
That's right.
Um, I mean, it would be hard to want to be in under 174, but you might get an opportunity. Excuse me. You might get an opportunity for it to undercut that and then bounce back. Maybe. I
It's
don't
been
know.
holding this miserable level for weeks on
Yeah.
weeks on weeks.
If
Is
I
it
got
going
something in the
anywhere?
160s and I really wanted to give it a try, I would see if that sticks. But I would keep it on a very tight stop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just not going anywhere. Oddly enough, I bought last November at 144 and I'm still positive on it. So um there's not much for me to do here. If it gets back to the 144 level, I'll look at what's going on in the charts and potentially add, but it's in no man's land here. So
Now we already talked coin, AMD. Um, I mean, at some point the bleeding has to stop. I just don't know if it's the 200 days coming up at 114. So maybe that's a place to, you know, throw a bid in. I don't know. Um,
there's a problem here though, Bags, as we're closing out the year. We in not just AMD, but AMD is closing below that 121.83 pivot
yeah,
that it made earlier this year, right? At
right
this
there.
point, unless it recovers by the end of the day. But as of now, we're closing under that pivot. Look at HIMS. HIMS is closing underneath the all-time high pivot for a stock that does 77% growth quarter over quote. It is closing under that pivot. Tesla at this point is closing under the 414.50 pivot for the year, right? These are yearly charts. So um, stuff to kind of just keep in the back of your head because these are not things you would expect to happen in a year where we're up 20 to 30%. To reject,
Last week you had me all bulled up on some Tesla. We talked after the show. Now I'm just like, why did I get bulled up on Tesla? Fuck.
I still think it's bullish. I told you the weekly crossover is happening here. I'm just saying it's it's I would have expected to close above 414.50. We
No,
still
I'm
have
not.
three.
I'm not picking on you about Tesla specifically.
Yeah.
It just my whole thesis for the past 6, 7 weeks has been like, we're probably going down further. And here I throw a bid on Tesla. It's just like, what are you doing, you big dummy? Um,
Gotta stick to your gut,
yeah,
right?
I know. Mara, I mean, same, right? You're losing every moving average, right? Like, I don't know, just
Yeah, last 2 weeks has
maybe somebody
literally
likes that trade. I don't.
last 2 weeks has literally ruined ever since FOMC. It's just been um let's see how we can ruin every chart on the planet, right?
Yeah. LRCX, maybe it's trying to carve some semblance of a bottom. I mean, you do have some support in this area, right? If you just go straight across. You do have a little bit of support there. The 200 week is catching up, but you're below everything on the daily,
Yep.
and that takes time to repair. Um, you got to come back up through this. You got to retake the 200 day, and then you got to fight the moving averages on the way up on the weekly. So that's why I say maybe you're trying to carve a bottom here, but bottoms are often sloppy. They're not so clean that you can just see them from miles away. Sometimes you can, don't get me wrong. It's great when you can, but more often than not, that's not the case in my experience. What else? Veri, baritone. Not my bag, baby. Um,
Barry or
V
VRT?
Veri.
Isn't that a fucking dump bump and dump?
It does not look. I mean, all right, I
No.
can put a bullish hat on and say the monthly is crossing over its moving averages. The weekly is trying to cross over its move averages. Anything can trade, but forever down and to the right is not my shtick. Um, I mean, if
My
you,
general theme is to stay away from pump and dumps, and
yeah,
this
yeah.
is one that definitely qualifies in that category. When I can get absolutely manhandled by AMD, why would I want to be manhandled by a pump and dump? Right? That's my viewpoint.
Grab it. Uh, yeah, I mean, again, anything can trade, and I'm not saying you're wrong or you're right. It's just not our kind of trade. If you got 450 out of it, I'd probably be gone if it were me. Just my 2 cents, just looking at the chart. I'd probably be gone if that were to happen.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, I had to scroll all the way up. Stock Daddy, AMD is spooking trash. That's hard to disagree, Stock Daddy. AMD will go once short-term bulls are tapped out. Maybe, Alex. Why try to exactly, Stock Daddy? That's the point I'm trying to say. Why try to guess the bottom? Buy high, sell higher instead of buying the dip and getting cut $1,000. Yeah, it's kind of like death of 1,000 paper cuts in some degrees. Um,
Why guess the bottom? Because when you guess the bottom correctly, it can be hella fucking lucrative, right? Like that, like
well,
that's those statements to me. I understand the conversation on, you buy the trend higher. That's if you're a trend trader. I get it. But there are 18 million different types of traders in the world.
yeah,
You don't have to be a trend trader. You could be a bottom fisher, understanding that bottoms take time to process. But when you find bottoms and you hope you can identify them, they are insanely lucrative, right? Like, and AMD is one of those companies that is, I think, under a $200 billion market cap, right? So yes, the price can go lower. They do about 26 or $28 billion in revenue a year. You're getting to the point where sales, like forget the chart, also fundamentals are starting to make sense, right?
right.
Maybe it goes a little bit lower. So yeah, you want to try to find these because you can get some decent returns out of these, right? Like we can talk about how do you remember how much we talked about the bottom in Coinbase at 55,
Oh my God, we pounded the table. We gave
right?
everyone who ever listened to us Coinbase at $55.
And you would have made that same argument in at 55 saying it's fucking trash, right? Like you would have said this is not a good chart. This is not a good chart. 600% later, you can go, right? Like and that's 2 years, right? So to me, I don't understand that argument necessarily because I like for my trading account, no, not a great place to be. But for investing accounts, for long-term swings, mid-term swings, this is how you can make, you find good value in companies, right? Yes, you have to wait for the bottom. I'm not saying that, but you have to start identifying it. So I'm saying, hey, this is 121 is a good level, and I will leave room to add at multiple swatches. Like we can have this conversation in Tesla at, remember when it was at 122? How much were we, or at least I was pounding the table at Tesla at 122, right? Like there's a lot of accumulation going on, all this stuff. It is up 300% since then, or 200% since then. And that was only 2 years ago.
I mean, I'm one of the bigger AMD bulls out there. It is I have a lot of my net worth tied up in AMD, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. And if you're long the stock, it's like you're saying you're buying it every day. Um, well, I don't want to buy it here. I'm not going to sell my position because it's my cost basis is so low. But I'm not exactly buying it here. And I agree with you, GP. I think that sometimes, depending on your style of trading, we can effectively find bottoms. But right now, I mean, just like you said moments ago, we're on that pivot. We haven't taken out that pivot and we haven't dipped below that pivot. But it doesn't look like it's retaking it right now. And that doesn't mean Thursday we don't open up and gap higher. That could absolutely happen. But I would say that's in the least likely scenario that I would see that happening. So, yeah, I subscribe to the buy high, sell higher. I can dig with that, but at the same time, at times you can point out these bottoms, and we were both pounding the table on Coinbase in the 50s. Um, I think even right here when it was what was that low 40, yeah, it hit like $48. It's like, oh my God, add. I bought calls down here, right? So
Yep.
I had my regular position of shares and I bought calls down here. And yeah, it bounced and came down. It was a little bit sloppy, but at the same time, there was too much going on that we liked from price action.
Yeah, like I, I,
That's not the
I,
case in
I,
AMD. That's the only point I'm
I'm
saying.
saying I'm both, right? And I can be a trader, so I'm not going to take a short-term position in AMD here because on the daily it looks like garbage. But if I want to Um, if I want to identify bottoms, if I want to identify trends that could be potentially forming, this is how I do it. And for me, it's been insanely lucrative. Look, man, when Netflix was at 160, there wasn't a single soul on the planet uh, that was talking about buying it or talking about even. And when we were here on this podcast, we talked about it, right? We talked about the death of Netflix. And then in April, after we got the 75% move down, which is what we called in January, we called for an upside move. Did I think it was going to go back to 900? Geez, like no idea, right? But it was an identifiable bottom. And the risk to reward was, hey, I want to build a position around here, right? And so I take a position at the 160 level and then I add on the way up, but doesn't mean, or I add on the way down to the levels that I want to get to. But those are insanely lucrative moments in markets where you're not in good companies. If you're talking about Nikola or Rivian or these companies that are still losing money 2 years into a monetary regime shift, Lucid. No, I'm not talking about those. Those bottoms are ultimately those stock is worth zero. They don't make a single dollar, right? So if you're talking about fundamentals, you shouldn't be buying either one of those companies. But I just don't like I I think for me you can be multiple you can have multiple hats on, right?
Yep. And Stock Daddy made a good point. You can buy very small position sizes. I'm sorry, I lost you, GP. I can see you talking, but I couldn't hear you talking.
Yeah, no worries. But look, we Cookie's talked about this multiple times. He's like, if it's been in a 5% range, don't keep buying in the 5% range. Wait for the like if you have a like let's say you have 10 grand and you want to split it up into three lot sizes. If you're gonna buy in a 5% range, all three lot sizes, then that's not a smart strategy, right?
No.
So if it goes lower, you keep a point where you can buy something lower, 10, 15, 20%, whatever it is. If it goes AMD goes to 100, you buy some more. If it goes to 80, you buy some more. At some point, the risk to reward is getting to set up properly, and I think that's my kind of conversation here. Is it's literally gone sideways for a really long time. AMD is
Yeah,
just one example, but
I think you're both making really good points. And you're absolutely right, GP. It doesn't matter what size you buy. If you're buying everything within that 5% size, yeah, a 10% down in that 5% range, right? Like you're 10% down. Everything that you had allocated is now 10% down or whatever it is. So yeah, you can buy small position sizes, but I think having areas or tranches, as I like to call them, where you're buying in on the way down or the way up, right? It lowers or changes your cost basis to be better than just stacking buys in the same price range. Um, Also, I threw this in the chat. Um, Everybody trades differently, right? And I think one thing that if you're very strict and very good about obeying your stops or letting your orders stop you out,
yeah.
um, it's okay to lose, right? Because you can try again. And let's say you're 7% down on your trade and you get stopped out, and then you buy in later, and all of a sudden you're 20% up. That 7% down meant very little, right? But unfortunately, what I find is most people aren't very good at stops or obeying their stops. It's a lack of discipline in a lot of cases, and that's where, I mean, myself included, that's where people make mistakes and lose more than they probably should in some cases. So
Yeah.
as much as I love AMD, for me, right, it would be irresponsible to throw on, let's just say, 10% of the cash that I've accumulated over the last 6 weeks into adding to my AMD position here. That doesn't mean I don't like AMD. I just don't like it. I just don't like adding more at size here to raise my cost basis.
Absolutely agree. And you touch on something that I think that's really fundamental in these conversations. I don't think people have a plan, right? My conversations, look, over the weekend, I started posting charts on quarterly and yearly and monthly timeframes. Why? Because that's part of my plan. I will throw on, let's say, 10, 15, 20 charts, right? Or whatever I think is going to be potentially good for 2025. And then I will work within those charts to figure out what I want to be a part of, right? Or maybe I don't want to be a part of anything and I just wait for the new year to
Yeah,
happen. But you like having a plan is helpful. Being patient is helpful, right? Because let's say you buy like let's pick on AMD. Let's say you buy here, right? A lot of people don't have patience, right? In terms of the move happening. If you wait for it, if you wait for it, maybe you can buy it at 100 or whatever it is, right? I think the fun example today was Jim Cramer finally sold out of AMD. It's it's anecdotal. His shit. He talks about 100 stocks a day. People pick on him all the time. I don't understand why, but it's fun. People like to do it. It's fun. But he sold out. So maybe this is the bottom, right? Who cares in terms of identifying the exact bottom? It's a process. It's a conversation. But then you have to have a plan on how you're gonna allocate at this bottom, right? And let's say you say, okay, I'm gonna wait for 100, and then I'm gonna put my entire wad into AMD at 100. Otherwise, I'll just miss the trade. That's also a valid plan, right? There's ways to do this that make sense in your risk profile. I think that's if you if you're listening to us, the one thing that I would have a plan going into 2025 on what you want to accomplish, what you want to see, what you want to gain, what you want to do, right? Like, so for me, it's been a good year. My investing account is up over 40% compared to the S&P. So I'm in a better place, but that's because I had a plan going into 2024. So I want the same plan going into 2025 for for the same thing. And that's, you everyone does goal-oriented stuff, right? At the end of the year. Here's my bucket list, here's my resolutions, here's whatever. But do you do the same for the stock market?
You should.
And if you're not, you should spend the time, whether it's fundamentals, because that's where you fall in, or if it's us, we're technicals. Um, it all really depends on what you want to do, right? So spend some time, grow yourself. I'm happy. I think we're all happy to answer questions on the podcast. So come on here. We are not going to stop this in the new year.
Or just
Um,
hit us up on Twitter, right? Or stock twits. Add us, right? Just hit us up.
so the only thing I won't do is I get a lot of requests of what do you think of this chart? It's a chart I don't look at. I'm posting 30 charts and you're asking me for your own chart.
Exactly.
You have no interaction with me. I'm not going to do that. If you ask me, Ben, sure, any day, anytime, right? But we have no communication. You just want my feedback. I'm not spending my time and energy there. I have so many other things going on. That's not my world. So uh, if I'm not responding to you on those moments, don't take it personally. I just have a lot of things going on. And
GP, we're running out of time.
oh, yeah,
We do New Year's resolutions every year that we've been doing this. Do you have a resolution this year?
market wise or personal?
Whatever you want to share.
So for me, I'm going to travel more. I'm going to take more time off from the markets. I'm going to step back from social posting in general. Um, I think it consumes a big part of my life, and it has for quite some time. And I need to focus on my own personal relationships and stuff that I haven't been as well. And so for me, that's the goal. You?
Highly recommend. 10 out of 10. I mean, we know what my journey's been over the past 18 months, and being closer with family and spending time with the people I love and traveling with the people I love, doing new things. Just incredible. It's been an awesome 2024 in a lot of ways. Um, I came up with my resolution a little bit differently. As a lot of you know, I haven't done a lot of trading in 2024. I've just sort of let my investments work. And yeah, here and there, I'll pick up some shares or buy some calls or some puts just for some short term money. Um, my goal for this year is to work at the stock market about the same amount of time that I did in 2024, but to have my best year on record in return. So that's my goal. I did 77% a couple of years ago, and I know that's a real stretch to be able to do that if it's not a raging bull market. But that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to be planned out and have exactly where I want to be and what I want to be in, and allocate resources um, gradually as opposed to just being full port all the time. So I'm going to see if I can at least get close to my all-time best returns by working less. So not saying it's going to happen, but that's my resolution. That's what I'm gonna have a goal to do this year.
Nice.
I mean, it's
It's a
been a
good
very good
goal.
year, 2024.
Yeah,
I
I
never,
got no
I
argument.
never, I never dreamed that I would be able to do as well as I have from a P&L standpoint, and work as little as I did. But I know that there were times where I was a little more apathetic than I probably should have been, and probably let a few losses get too big on me, and that's what hurt my P&L this year. So I'm going to cut that bullshit out and see if I can have a record year in 2025.
Nice. Well, good luck in that process. I think remember what Cookie said, which is this is a time of patience, right? Like so things will gyrate, things will rotate, but we're we are hitting maybe his opinion has changed now. We are heading kind of escape velocity on a lot of things. So let the escape velocity play out and just be patient. Over
Yep.
trading in 2024 would have crushed you, right? So
Yeah, I'm not forcing any trades. I'm
yeah,
not forcing any trades. I'm not going to be like, oh, I got to get an extra whatever percent. No, not doing that. That's not in the MO for 2025. So, GP, thanks for jumping on. Nick, my brother, we miss you. Talk to you soon.
yeah, feel better, man.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Love you, my brother. Happy New Year to everybody for watching. Thanks for sticking with us another year. As far as I know, we'll be back next Tuesday. We'll see you then.
See ya. All right, Ben, have a happy New Year.